Hey everyone, hope you've had a great day so far. I hope that you enjoyed church yesterday. Today was supposed to be when I shared another blog post. Over the last couple of months, I've been writing some blogs on our church website, and today was supposed to be the latest one. We've been putting them out every 2 weeks on Monday mornings, but instead of a blog post today, I wanted to do something a little different. I want to take you on a short trip around Bono and Macedonia to just a couple of places that are pretty special to me. Let's do something a little bit different. Let's go. So I'm standing on the porch of the Bono Pentecostal Holiness Church. And the reason that I'm facing this way instead of showing you the church sign or showing you the church building itself is right over there where that white building was the original location of the Bono PH Church. That was the location where that building actually wasn't even there. It was an old orangish brick building that had a fellowship hall in the back that had this old white chalk on it. If you were wearing a black shirt or black pants or something and you rubbed against it, you were going to have chalk on your clothes for the rest of the day. Aggravating stuff. But I remember attending that church. But this church, and I'll spin you guys around a little bit. But this church right here in these front doors, and it's too bright to get out of it there in the sun. But this church is the church that I got saved in. Saved, sanctified, called into ministry. This building here opened up in the summer of 1994, and at that time it didn't even have a pastor. But what I remember about this church, the reason this church is so important to me, is it's not just because it was my childhood home church. It was the places that it's where I met Jesus. It's the church where my mom was a Sunday school teacher. It's where I remember for 3 years straight. I'm talking about from the time I was 12 to 14 years old. I had 3 different Sunday school teachers, and all 3 of them, I was the only student. But all 3 of those ladies invested their time into my life. I remember when I was called into ministry, I walked into Pastor Jimmy Rogers' office, and I went to him and I said, "Hey, I need to talk to you for a moment," and sat down and I explained to him, I said, "Listen, I feel this desire and this calling to become a preacher, to become a pastor." And that man could have discouraged me, that man could have tore me down, but instead what he did was he prayed for me. He talked to me, he mentored me, he encouraged me, but on top of all of that, he gave me my first few times to preach. And trust me, they were bad sermons. And he heard about it. He had people in the church that didn't like that I was preaching because I wasn't very good at it. But still, the man believed in me. And there were plenty of other people in this church who continue to go to this church who believed in me at a young age and that helped grow me up. This church, to me, reminds me of Proverbs 22:6 in my life when it says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's older, he will not depart from it." This church is that church for me. But this is not the only place that we're going to stop. I'm going to take you to another church that's not just in Bono, but it's actually in Macedonia. I just want y'all to know that Pamplico Highway isn't the only road that's under construction. It's So I am now standing at the back of the Oak Grove Pentecostal Holiness Church. And the reason that I'm not up front is because there's a lot of traffic on Highway 17A today. I guess because it's a Saturday, but also the sun is just really, really bright. And either I'll be squinting and you can't see my eyes, or you just can't see anything. So I decided to come here to the back. This is another church that I have a lot of family who go here. My grandma goes here. My granddad, before he passed, attended this church. I've got aunts and uncles and cousins and so on. And but it also is a special place for me. Not only Bridget grew up in this church. Like there's a whole second story. Like honestly, as a kid, I didn't even realize churches could have a second story. But this one does. There has a lot of classrooms, and there's even a youth room, if I'm not mistaken, on this very corner. That's relatively new in the last few years. The point is that this is another special church, not only for Bridget, but for myself. I used to come out here on Wednesday nights, and we'd play football in that field on Wednesday nights. I'm surprised none of us actually got hurt in that field. I remember there was I want to say it might have been a Wednesday night where I was at the altar of this church, and it was at that night, on that district revival service, that I began speaking in tongues for the first time and received the baptism of the Holy Spirit. So I showed you guys Bono PH. That's a few minutes from here. That's where I got saved, sanctified, called into ministry. But here's where I was baptized in the Holy Spirit. There's one more place I want to go. All right, now finally we are in the faculty parking lot of Timberland High School, and because the sun is in my face, I was pointing a different direction, but this is Timberland High School, and I'm in the faculty parking lot because of that particular door right there. Let me get my pointing correct. Inside of that door, when I went to school here, I graduated here in 2000, and so I've been gone from this school for 21 years. I played baseball here. I was in a couple of clubs here, but I was a part of the first graduating class of Timberland High School, because the school didn't open until 1996. But inside of that door was a classroom for a math teacher named Miss Rourke. And Miss Rourke was, to me, the best teacher at this school. It's not that there weren't great teachers, but I had a lot of phenomenal teachers here. But Miss Rourke stood out above all the rest because not only did she love her students, but she showed how much she loved her students. She would not let us give up. And I'm talking about taking math courses here. I'm talking about taking pre-calc and calculus classes. I passed the advanced placement calculus class simply because she challenged me enough to not give up. We would ask her time and time again in math class, and we do this to all of our math teachers. When are we ever going to use this stuff in real life? She taught us why and how we could use this stuff in real life. Never, always believed in us, never let us give up. So now that we're back in my front yard, you might ask me, you might say, well, Dwayne, why in the world would you take us on this trip? Why would you show us around a little where you live at? And the older that I get, the more I start thinking about the idea of legacy. What am I going to leave after me that could be passed down to the generations that come after me. I was a youth pastor for 10 years, from 2008 until 2018, and for 10 solid years, I served teenagers and their families with everything that I had. And quite often I think about, what am I leaving to the teenagers? How am I imparting to them? Am I teaching them a biblical worldview? Am I passing on characteristics and personalities and traits that I know would be pleasing to God? And nothing was happier to me than when I saw those teens start living for God and making decisions that I knew would please God. 3 John chapter 1 verse 4 states this. It says, I could have no greater joy than to see that my children are following the truth. Now, in all honesty, when John writing that letter, he was writing it to a man named Gaius. And Gaius was not his child, but you could say that he was kind of like a spiritual child. But honestly, they were just good friends. And John was encouraging his friend. He was telling him, I've heard the testimonies. I've heard how you treat teachers that come into your town. I see how hospitable you are, how you treat other people, and how you try to live for God. And knowing that you're living for Jesus and you're living for the truth brings me an overwhelming amount of joy. And that's how I felt as a youth pastor. When I would see my teens living for God, I would just feel overjoyed and overwhelmed with encouragement and just happiness, knowing that maybe I played a small part in what God was doing in their lives. I know that's how we as pastors feel whenever we see all of you at the well living for God, accepting His calling and reading the Bible and learning more and joining a small group and all of these things that helps you grow into the man and the woman of God that He wants you to be. It brings us joy to see you do that. And that's what we're passing on to those after us. But passing on a legacy of our own is not really our legacy. It's that we're honoring the people that have come before us. I showed you Bono PH Church because there were people in that church that invested their time and energy and prayers into me. Just like if you go out my backyard and walk through a small little path, you'll get to my parents who have invested their time. I lived 24 years in their home, and they raised me to be the man that I am today. The man, the husband, the preacher, the pastor. I am who I am because of the investment that they made in my life. Just like the teacher at Timberland High School, just like the pastors in the family at Oak Grove PH, not only in mine, but in Bridget's life. The well has a history that has helped the people that are there today. You ask Mr. JL, you ask Mr. Steve, you ask Miss Mary Ann, you ask the people that grew up in that church and have served in that church, you'll know that the well has a history. And so the legacy that we pass on and watching other people live for God because of what we've done today is just building on the heritage and the legacy that came before us. But on top of all of that, when I read 3 John 1:4, I think about God. I think about how He looks at us. Is the way that we live our lives and the way that we're passing down our own histories and traditions and teachings and the way that we live, passing them down from generation to generation, is that pleasing to God? In other words, is God happy at who we are? Is He pleased at us? I'm reminded of when my brother and my brother's the pastor of a church and I'm an associate pastor, and whenever we're with our parents, time and time again, people will go up to our parents who know them and say, you must feel proud of your boys because of the preachers that they are. And my parents aren't proud because we're preachers. My parents are proud of who we are because we're men who take responsibility for our lives and we live according to the way we've been raised. That's what they're proud about. And when I think about God and us being His children, is He pleased with our lives? With all of our faults and all of our failures and mistakes that we make, is God still finding joy knowing that we're following the truth? But not only that, and who we're becoming. All of these things have been coming to my mind this past couple of weeks. Listen, leave us a comment, share that, and like it. I hope that you enjoyed it, and have a great rest of your day.